नमो नमः अष्टविनायक नमो नमः गणपति बाप्पा
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Keenan Yoga podcast again. I think we've done one episode a week for I don't know how long now. So we've gotten to this habit of doing one with me and a guest and one with just me now. And today, again, it's just me. So for good or for bad, you got me today. And before I get started, I just wanted to say, why not try and come to the Goa retreat that we're doing? I think it's in November, and we're there in Goa, India, for a month at Purple Valley. It's 2 weeks and 2 weeks. If you've worked with me before, then you can come for either of the 2 weeks. If you haven't worked with me, then it's best to come for the first 2 weeks, just more of an introduction. But if you've got any questions about it, please feel free to get in touch, and I'd just love to see you there. It's probably the most kind of intensive work with me that I'm doing this year and maybe next, really, because it's a whole month. And yeah, we're in this kind of situation in Purple Valley, Goa, if you've not been, where it's quite secluded. The Shala's beautiful. It's very much a retreat setting, whilst you're in the beautiful nature of Goa. And yeah, it's a really unusual experience. So if you're thinking of it, or if you have any questions, then please don't hesitate, as I said, to get in touch. I'd love to see you there. Anyway, enough of me and the advertising now. And I just thought today, I didn't really know quite what to do, but I'm feeling quite reflective recently. It's the eve, or at least a week before my hip operation. I'm having a hip replacement, if you hadn't heard. Yeah, that's made me kind of sum up my yoga time and reflect on the past and what I've done and why I've done it and what I have done differently. And so I suppose that's where we find ourselves today in terms of the podcast, reflections on what is almost 25 years of practice. I started practice at the age of, I can't even remember now. I think it was 20. It might have been 21, but around that area. It definitely was at 22. And now I'm 46. So it's definitely 25 years of consistent practice. Every day, most days, I shamefully say sometimes twice a day. So I've done a lot of practice, let's put it that way. And have I got any wiser? Maybe, maybe not. I mean, in some respects, I think, before I say anything else, we always think that, someone that's done it longer, they must know more. But, sometimes the beginner's mind is actually more powerful, more prescient, more aware than someone that's done it for ages, right? Someone who may have more insights in the early days than someone who has just been doing it for years, So time isn't necessarily a guarantee of anything, is what I'm saying. But nevertheless, let's have a crack on. And I just made a few little notes that I thought I could expand on about, sound bites, about things that I have learned and things that I have changed my mind on in the last 25 years, which is a long time if we kind of think about it, right? So, first of all, no posture makes you happier. That seems obvious, and I know it's a cliche, but, well, it's true. No posture that I've ever done and made me happier. And I think for many years I was chasing the carrot of, when I've done this series, when I've done that posture, when I can press up to a handstand, I'll be happy. I'll be satisfied in my own self and my own body. No, that never happens, sadly enough. The satisfaction comes through accepting oneself, I think, not through trying to prove oneself. Again, that sounds obvious, but it's the self-acceptance that's really the major thing. Because once you've done that thing that you wanted to do, the goalposts shift, of course, because the main issue has never been really counted, really delved into, right? Which is self-acceptance for good and for perceived not so good things, right? So nothing really made me happier. I remember sitting in the office in Mysore with Shirachi, and I'd completed the advanced series. And yeah, I certainly didn't feel any better about that moment, although I thought maybe I would. Anyways, goals are always shifting, aren't they? And at a certain point, you have to realize that, well, something in that is inside oneself. And I think before you've kind of gone through that and gone, it's like saying, well, money doesn't make you happy before you've made money. Right? And before you've done the postures, you can't really realize that. So I'm not saying don't do the postures. Do the postures, but you need to do the postures possibly. And then you'll realize that, I think, if anything like me, maybe they will make you happy, but they never really kind of do anything really extra than the basic yoga that you could do in the early days. In fact, I think we've often become more dissatisfied as we go on in yoga than in the early days of our yoga practice, when anything was good, right? Next, no posture is worth sacrificing your daily comfort. So basically, doing any perceived posture, leg behind head, capitas being the obvious culprits, that kind of thing, uh, it's never as satisfactory as just walking around in daily life feeling okay, right? In other words, doing capitas and then hobbling around for the rest of the day is not a valid exchange. It doesn't match up in terms of exchanging your daily comfort for doing any posture for a couple of seconds on a yoga mat. Although, crazy enough, well, I exchanged it for years, so I'm certainly not pointing the finger. But nevertheless, that's something that, again, just almost have to go through sometimes, right? Next one. Just because they're an esteemed teacher, it doesn't mean they know what's going on in your body. Yeah, doesn't mean even that they know what's right for you. Doesn't mean that you even need to go with their instruction if you feel differently about what you think you should be doing. Yeah, your voice is equally as valid as any authorized or certified teacher. Don't think that they know what's going on inside you. No one can. No one can apart from you. Follow your gut. If their teaching doesn't feel right, just because everyone else is loving them and just because they've got this accreditation, doesn't mean they're right for you. We don't need to say whether they're right or wrong or good or bad, but just leave it at that. They're not your teacher. Just even if they are much respected and esteemed in the yoga world and everyone else loves them, maybe they're just not for you. Walk away. Yeah, find that person who resonates with you, whoever they are, certified or authorized or not. Right. Next one. Practice alone is not stronger than genetics. Practice does a lot. Yeah, we can get a lot more out of our body, obviously, when we practice. But that is not half as strong as what you come to the mat with, right? That will ultimately dictate what you are or are not going to be able to do in your practice. Practice alone is not enough. If you haven't got the genetics, you'll never stick the leg behind the head. You'll never do kapotasana. You'll never do a jump pat. Doesn't mean you can't get more out of your body and keep on gently and carefully trying these things, but the hardwiring, as it were, is there already for us. So don't blame yourself for these things. It's just the long line of your history, right? That's really going to dictate what you do on the yoga mat. It's not that you're lazy or you don't work hard enough, nothing like that. It's what you've been given. I could go on there. Breathing, next one. Breathing is indeed everything. Yeah, the diaphragm and the movement of the diaphragm is everything, right? Not only does it relax deep tension from the body, purge deep tension from the body, it also dictates how we do the posture. The movement of the diaphragm dictates how the muscles stretch because it's in the very center of our body. So it does everything. The diaphragm is the master key. And for me, the bandhas, the shape of the body, holding the body in the most efficient shape for breathing, is the reason for the bandha. The diaphragm is the reason for the bandhas, sorry, not the bandhas, the reason for the breathing, right? The breathing is the ultimate focus. And the diaphragm, when we're talking about breathing, is the ultimate focus of the breathing, right? How it moves. And not how much it moves, but how much subtlety and control you can make in its movement. It's infinitely profound, and I can still keep on developing my relationship with it forever. Next one. Tradition means very little to me now. Oh, did I write that? I guess, yeah. I'm increasingly uninterested in traditional. When we look back, Krishnamacharya wasn't teaching the Ashtanga sequence of Patabi Joyce. When we look at Patabi Joyce's early teaching, they're pretty different. They're pretty different when he taught the early students to the way that we see Sharat teaching latterly. You know, the method is very important. Yeah. Very, in as much as it's very effective, it has its importance from being pragmatically effective, right? But the method is outside the little nuances of Ashtanga, right? The method is about the breathing, about the understanding of methodicalness, means vinyasa, yeah, kind of like very wide ranging and kind of basic principles rather than the little details that people talk about when they talk about traditional. You know? Following the sequence is a helpful technique for logistical management of a class, so if you're going to self-practice, but it doesn't dictate Ashtanga yoga. And after a while, I do believe that Patabi Joyce, he didn't want people practicing those sequences forever. In fact, the early teachers were given their own sequences in the end once they completed his sequences. Right, so I don't think we were meant to be stuck rigidly to practicing those Ashtanga sequences forever like that. I probably could go on there as well. We'll leave it there for now because I've got more to cover. Okay, next one. People's bodies don't open by being pushed into postures. I've said that many times, so let that be as a statement as it is, right? Postures don't open by being pushed further than they can go themselves. We should talk about active range of movement rather than passive range of movement. We don't want the joints to become too flexible, too loose. No one benefits from that. Yeah. And why not take your time and do it yourself, right? People could be certainly helped in postures, but that doesn't mean that they need to be adjusted in postures physically. They can still be physically helped without being adjusted, means pushed too far. Yeah, just to clarify that one, because often people say, well, do you mean that we shouldn't be touched in postures? Do you mean that you shouldn't use physical assistance? Yes, physical assistance is very helpful in many ways, but not physical adjustments. I don't think they are helpful. Okay, next one. Being a good teacher has nothing to do with being the best in the room. Yeah, I think that it's easy as a teacher to conflate those two things, right? I'm the best person at yoga, in as much as I'm the most advanced practitioner, whatever that means. Means, basically you could do those postures. And so therefore I should be the one teaching. No, I don't. Often those people that could do the postures, they're often not the best teachers because they could just do them, right? Their bodies just do them. They've never had to work on how to do them. So in fact, kind of the opposite way around oftentimes. A good teacher is not the best practitioner, does not need to be the best practitioner to understand the basic mechanisms of how the body moves, right? Because being the best in the room, again, will be just about genetics, really. Teaching and practice, two different things, not immediately connected. Okay, next one. Yoga means a lot more to me than I thought. Okay, what does that mean? What I mean by this is that word yoga, in terms of a method and aims, the more I do the podcast and talk to academics about yoga, history and the uses of yoga and all the different methods and all the different objectives, it's such a multifaceted term that, well, first of all, I think I just thought, well, yoga, like everyone else, yoga means union. Yoga means union with self. But actually, historically, yoga's meant much more disunion with the sense of self that we know, more than union, right? For example, right? And as much as yoga has been about finding the truth in terms of God, often yoga actually rejects an ultimate God or ultimate worship of a creative force. So it means all different things. And I think that just opening up to the fact that there's all these various schools and streams of yoga has been a real eye opener and shown me that, well, I don't have to stick to just believing that yoga is one thing. It's very helpful expanding one's boundaries in terms of just thinking that this tradition is so rich. And well, asana has been used for meditation, but asana has also been used to change the energy of the body in terms of hatha yoga. And asana has been used therapeutically in Ayurveda, right? For many years. So doing asana therapeutically is also valid, as much as people might say, oh, yoga therapy is just a newfangled thing and it's not really yoga. Well, actually, Ayurveda uses yoga asanas for thousands of years. Yoga, and it's just almost anything you can say is yoga. Anything you can say is yoga, right? Almost. Next one. Don't expect support from your peers necessarily. Well, it's great if your colleagues do support you, but often they, listen, without being cynical, often your colleagues in a yoga center, or even like me, just out there, not attached to any yoga center these days, your colleagues aren't necessarily your supporters because they perceive competition, with you. That's a shame, and I don't subscribe to this. I would like us all to work together to develop the science of yoga and develop our teaching methodologies, but often it tends to be that way. That there is a lot of competition in the yoga world between people, and so don't feel bad about yourself if you have this kind of experience with people that you'd like support out of. It just seems to be the way it is. Sad but true. Next one. Making your whole life yoga is a bad idea. Well, yes, I think putting all your eggs in any basket is not necessarily the greatest idea in terms of you get a bit tunnel focused. You start to believe that anyone that doesn't do yoga isn't got a valid objectives in life or a valid lifestyle, right? You start to become rather myopic in one's focus. I think it's always good to have a balanced focus, to realize that there are people out there doing their own kind of yoga that are not practicing yoga official per se, right? Just kind of it just kind of expands your boundaries. I think people that just do yoga and stay just doing yoga are like teachers that stay in the schools, right, and just work with kids all the time. And they just, if you're anything like me with your school and your upbringing in school, you just kind of feel that sometimes those teachers lacked a kind of worldly perspective, right? The same with yoga teachers, right? You need to get out there and do different things, and just realize that there's more to life also than maybe there's more to life than yoga. And on that same note, look, sometimes yoga practice is not the best practice for you to do. Some days you just don't need that internal focus, right? It's not right. You just want to get out of yourself, get your mind off yourself, get moving, see some different things, get in nature, talk to different people, get the music on, forget yourself a bit. Yeah, you don't always need to have this tunnel focus, this deep focus on yourself. Yeah, that can be very, very helpful. Obviously, it's the nature of yoga, which is incredibly introspective. Yeah, but also doing yoga in a classroom is in a certain sense getting out of yourself, isn't it? It's not to say doing yoga in a classroom setting is performative if you're doing it in a lead class, but in some respects it's a group endeavor, so it does take you out of yourself as well. So that could be useful as well. And sometimes just not doing it, just doing something else, going to the gym, going for a run, going out for a walk with the dog or without the dog. Just, the best thing. Strength training to balance yoga is essential. That's my next one. Yeah, up to 36 or so, I did nothing apart from yoga for many years, 15 years at least, right? But after that, I think as one gets older as well, you just need to combine flexibility training, which is more, as much as we might try and do yoga to mobilize muscles and less emphasize flexibility, it's always going to be balanced more that way than strength. There's less strength training in yoga than there is flexibility in terms of asanas, right? So I think that it's just I can't see it two ways really. It's really just almost essential to try and do a little bit of strength training if you can. I think for the longevity of your body and the stability of your joints, even if it meant shaving down 15, 20 minutes of your yoga practice and doing 15 minutes of YouTube exercises with light weights that you could find, or even going to the gym sometimes, even if I do myself out of some business, suggesting that you don't do yoga all the time, that's a really good idea. It just balances the yoga, I think, especially as one gets older and inevitably loses more muscle mass as we get older. The next one. Practice is for life, not the other way around. In other words, this practice is to make your life better, not to suit yourself to practice. I spent many years suiting myself to practice, sacrificing so many things to get up so early in the morning and do my practice and restrict my diet, just live a very monastic, very rigid, very life-denying lifestyle, really, to be honest. For the sake of what? Nothing, really. Practice is to live life, I think, and to live a more meaningful life in the world that we know. God knows whether there is an afterlife or we're practicing for anything in the next world, but we could certainly say that living this life surely is a valuable thing, which means really going for it and enjoying it. And if that sometimes means not getting up in the morning or eating a meal that doesn't necessarily suit your practice, so be it. Also, there's a situation where the exception is not the rule, right? General rules for life, general guidelines, but don't worry if you break them. They're meant to be broken. If you're too rigid, everything becomes rather unfun anymore, rather, uninspiring. And practice takes a nosedive as well if you're just feeling like it's closed you into a corner. To that end, look, getting up too early in the morning is a bad idea. If you're getting up before 5 a.m., your natural rhythms of your body are disrupted. And I think there's been studies now saying that that's really not good for one's health. And it just takes you into this kind of weird lifestyle where you have to go to bed really early to get up really early and practice. I did that for many years, getting up at 2 a.m. to practice before I went in to teach in the City of London at 6. It's just not helpful for your body, for your partner or your family, for your lifestyle, just for anything. Try not to do that, if possible. Holding a safe space as a teacher is 99% of it. Yeah, before I used to think, well, I need to give them this information. They need to know the way to practice is this way and not that way and blah, blah, blah. No, the main thing is just leaving the space open for people to feel supported and safe and to explore their bodies and practice and have space, what they don't usually have in life, right? We don't usually have just space to be. And having someone all over you in the practice room again and having to do it their way and having all this information being thrust upon you all the time is really not what we need or want. It's much better to just feel that you're being supported and you feel looked after and you feel safe also to try and explore your body in the way that you think you need to, rather than like thinking, well, is this the way that they need me to do it to be a valid member of this group or to be accepted in this Mysore room? That's an unfortunate thing, I think. Right? The main thing that people need, that we all need, is just space to be. Out of that space to be, the body has its own intelligence that will come through. To that end, next one. There's no right or wrong answer. I used to think that, well, you have to do the back bends, for example, with straight feet. You have stand up and go back, straight feet, and back bend, straight feet. Just as one tiny example. I don't agree with that anymore. For many people, sacrum, the position of the feet turned out works. It just works better, gives more space. So, that's just one example of things I've changed. Many things I've changed about practice, about the way I look at bodies. So also don't be afraid to change things. Just because you're teaching doesn't mean you can't contradict yourself and say, well, like, look, listen, I've changed my mind now. I've seen it work in other ways. Try this now. Yeah. There's no right or wrong or one answer. Another one on the recent back of my intermediate series, little crash course I did at the weekend. I would say everyone should have their version of primary and intermediate series within 2 years. Yes, you heard, 2 years. I think that primary for 1 year and then intermediate, build that up in the second year. And after a few years, have your version of both sequences. Doesn't mean you've completed them. Doesn't mean you're doing all the postures necessarily. Yeah, for sure. But it does mean that you've got a variety of postures that your body's doing, a variety of movements. It's inspiring. It gives balance to the body. And yeah, it just makes sense in terms of that was the way, at least, that the early students were taught in Mysore. In fact, as I've said many times, they went through the primary and the intermediate, not the whole thing, but a version of, in the first few months they arrived in Mysore. Okay, getting to the end of them now. It's not what you do, but how you do it that matters. Yeah. So it's not the advanced shape that you can make with your body. If you're not making it in an effective way with your muscles, right, in terms of finding a balance between opposing forces and muscle groups, if you're not doing from the muscles and you're just pushing into your joints to get that leg behind the head or jam that foot someplace, then it's not an effective posture. It's the balance of muscle groups that makes it effective. So to put it another way, if you're doing a very carefully done primary series, that's actually much more effective for your body than a badly done advanced series. Even if the postures are achieved in the visual sense in an advanced series, if they're not understood in terms of active muscle engagements and the breathing coming from the diaphragm, it's a very, very little effect. So it's much more important in what you're doing inside the postures than the actual shape of, okay, yes, the leg's here, the foot's there, so the posture's achieved or completed. That's neither here nor there. It's how you feel it in your body that really makes them effective for purpose, and effective in terms of the physical health of the body, and effective in terms of the energetic health. If the body is overstimulated, if the body isn't holding the posture through the spine, means that the spine is basically bending without being supported by the muscle groups, then the nerves of the spine become overstimulated and one ends up being ungrounded and unbalanced generally in life, where that should obviously not be the case. So you need to be able to hold a posture through the spine. The spine needs to feel supported. If it doesn't, and if the body is basically stretched into its joints and ligaments, then this does not have a positive effect on one's energy. So if you do feel ungrounded, you shouldn't feel ungrounded. And look at your practice again and see if you can do some experiments to adjust to feel better. Yeah? And I think that's also part of it. Experimentation. Allow yourself to experiment over a period of time. And I know that experiment is constantly going to shift and change. Right? It's not like one thing works forever. It works for a while and then it doesn't. And then we have to shift and change. Constantly be open to that. Last one. Giving back postures is actually more enjoyable than getting them. That's funny, isn't it? I mean, I know it sounds a bit cliched as well, but it's true. In my experience, the first half is building up postures, and the second half of practice is giving them back. And it's really liberating, actually. Paradoxically, it's really enjoyable to just be letting go, letting go, letting go. So I thought it wouldn't be, but actually, there really isn't so bad a thing after all, right? So no need to hold on to postures when they don't feel comfortable anymore. Then give them back again, right? No problem. So I hope I've piqued your interest in this little snapshot of a few things, but I know I could have said more things as well. And if given another 20 minutes, I could probably fill that up with uh, more little yoga anecdotes. But I'm always interested to hear what you think as well. So please comment and let me know the kind of little yoga bites that you could think of in terms of what you've developed in your understanding and practice. I'm always all ears. This is a discussion after all, not a lecture. Well, that's how I like to keep it. And well, I'll be back next week with another guest. Until then, I hope you've enjoyed the podcast and don't forget to like it or subscribe or all those things people say. Apparently, that does help the ratings. Well, next time you hear from me, I will probably have been in and had my hip op. So wish me luck, and I'll see you in a week or two. Bye for now.